Okay, so we're going to talk about our last section of notes. So this is going to be ecological succession. So what does this mean? So succession is best described as a series of predictable changes that happen in a community over time. And so succession is essentially an explanation of how a community or all of the living or biotic factors develop and interact over time. So whether that be the formation of a new community or recovery and reestablishment of a previous community after a natural disaster or human interaction. So each stage of succession is called a seral stage, and within each stage, new species will will outcompete species from the current stage, and then this natural and competitive progression is what allows a community to establish itself over time and become stable, and which is what we will call a climax community. So there's going to be two main types of succession. So the first one is going to be primary succession, which begins on newly exposed surfaces. So basically it's just going to be bare rock, and bare rock can be exposed either due to glaciers melting or retreating, like we can see in this animation. And then eventually the bare rock can also occur as a volcano that erupted and the lava hardens, leaving bare rock behind. In this animation, so every ecosystem that has existed on our planet has begun with primary succession. So when bare rock is exposed, the first species to establish a community is going to be called a pioneer species, and these species, such as various lichen or mosses, usually arrive from wind or are shaken off of bird species on the newly exposed surfaces. And then over time, these pioneer species will naturally break down the rock surface, coupled with physical and chemical weathering events. So as the rock is broken down, soil begins to form, and with the establishment of soil comes smaller plant species such as grass and shrubs. And then over 100 years, as the soil becomes more established and rich in nutrients, trees begin to grow as there are seeds that are also blown in by wind or shaken off of various bird species again. So as the ecosystem becomes more complex, and so do the number and abundance of organisms that live there, which can then in turn result in a more biodiverse and more community interactions will occur. So when the interaction of all living things reaches its peak and it's stable and it's at its most diverse um, part, and the succession events is said to reach its climax. And if you remember from the previous slide, this is what we call a climax community. It's kind of like the final one because the ecosystem has reached a state of permanence and is no longer progressing through any of these stages again. So secondary succession is the second type of succession we are going to talk about, and it's typically less complex because it occurs when soil is already established, and so not all communities will go through secondary succession, while others might go through secondary succession multiple times. So, and that is because secondary succession occurs after events such as like forest fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, and so what we might consider to be natural disasters, but it's important to remember that secondary succession can also occur after humans have interacted with the community. So, for example, like deforestation, clearing land for agriculture, intentionally burning areas to increase biodiversity, or human-caused wildfires. So, because secondary succession events begin with the soil, it's not necessary to have pioneer species, and so it takes less time for the community to recover and establish that climax community because the soil is already there.